Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 9, Episode 3, The Serenity Now. Hello everyone. I hope everyone's doing well out there. I am doing great. Finally, here in Colorado, we have a fall-like day. I mean, it's been fall now for a couple of weeks. However, we're dealing with like a heat wave here in Colorado. It was like 90 degrees yesterday. I'm over it. I'm sick of it. I need my fall weather. Today it's like 71, so I'm happy about that. I'm wearing long sleeves. It's a stupid thing to be upset about, but I'm just done. I need the seasons to shift now. The leaves are changing, and they have been, so that has been fantastic to see. I just want to feel it. I want to feel the fall. Other things going on in my life. I've been missing my little boy for the last 5 days. He left on Sunday for the sixth grade class trip. It's a STEM trip to the Olympic National Park in Washington. And I know he's having a fantastic time. Now, they're not allowed to bring phones on the trip, any electronic devices, in fact, which I love. I think that's absolutely the way they should do these trips so that kids aren't distracted. And they're there to learn. They're there to experience things that most people don't get to experience. So I am all for the no phone policy, but it's also really hard to not have contact with your youngest. My daughter did 3 of these trips when she was in middle school, and this is the first one for my son. And, you know, he's just my baby, and he's like my little snuggle buddy, and I'm just having a little bit of I hope he's having a good time, little mom worry moment right now. But they do send a "we got here" picture and email, and then a midweek, "hey, we're doing great" with pictures. And in both of the pictures, my son looks very subdued, I will say. Everyone's like smiling, and it looks like they're like cheering when the picture's being taken. My son's just like, "hey, what's up?" So of course that has my mind going. I don't know if it really means anything, because also my son is at the stage where he doesn't smile in photos because he hates his smile, and it breaks my heart because, of course, I think he's got the most beautiful smile, but he doesn't like his smile. He doesn't like how he looks when he's smiling in photos. So he is trying to like kind of play it cool. He will do like a smirk, like a half smirk, trying to look cool, whatever it is. He won't really give me a reason. So those pictures, I'm like, he doesn't look like he's having that good of a time. But again, it could just be his pose now that he does. He doesn't really smile in photos. But anyway, I had a stress dream last night about it, that he was like super cold, because it is cold where they are in Olympic National Park. I don't think it was supposed to get over like 53 degrees the entire time they were there. We packed, appropriately. They have a packing list. We packed jackets, hats, gloves, long underwear. Everything he packed was for cold weather. So I'm hoping he's wearing everything appropriately. Okay, I'm not going to go on about my little mom worries, but at any rate, he returns tomorrow night, and I'm very excited. Okay, let's get into this episode. The synopsis for The Serenity Now is as follows. Jerry becomes attuned to his emotions with unfortunate consequences. Elaine seeks the advice of a rabbi to help reduce her shiksappeal. Kramer taps into an Anytown USA lifestyle by putting up a screen door for his apartment, while George takes a job selling computers for his father. This episode was written by Steve Coren. All right, we start out in, I think it's George's car, whatever. He's driving the car, and he's with his parents. We have the return of Frank and Estelle. We haven't seen them in a while. And Frank is in the back seat right behind Estelle in the passenger seat, and he's asking her to move the seat up. And she says it's as far as it goes. And he tells her there's a mechanism. You pull it and throw your body weight. Estelle claims that she's tried it. It doesn't go. If you want the leg room, say you want the leg room. Don't blame the mechanism. So, it's starting. The fighting has started. George tells him to relax. We're 5 blocks from the house. Just sit sideways. Oh, Frank is so annoyed. Like an animal, I have to sit because of her. Serenity now. What is that? George asks. Frank tells him that the doctor gave him a relaxation cassette, and when his blood pressure gets high, he's supposed to say, Serenity now! Are you supposed to yell it? George asks. The man on the tape wasn't specific. They pull up to the house, and George sees that their screen door has blown off again. Estelle yells at Frank that she told him to fix that thing. Serenity, no! Next, we're in Monk's. Jerry is with his girlfriend Patty, and she says how she made plans for them with another couple to go to La Caridad. It's a Chinese-Spanish restaurant, but it's on the same night that they were supposed to go to the Knicks home opener. Well, she thought it would be more fun to go to the restaurant, so she gave the tickets away. What? Jerry says. She asks, are you mad? No, I love a good Chinese, Spanish, whatever. Patty says, I've never seen you get mad. I get miffed, mad, peeved, mad, irked. She says, I would like to see you get really mad. The actress here is, of course, Lori Loughlin. She plays Patty. I'm sure many of you recognize her from Full House. She played Aunt Becky, and she also starred in Summerland. But more recently, though, she was involved in this scandal involving her daughter, the college admissions scandal from a few years ago, where she lied and paid to get her daughter accepted to a top school. So honestly, I'm not a big fan of Lori Loughlin personally, but I do think she's very good in this episode. I like her chemistry with Jerry and how she goads him. Very solid performance. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. George asks why Patty wants to see him mad. Well, she thinks I suppress my emotions. Well, what do you care? Good body, Jerry says while he's got cereal coming out of his mouth. George is like, you know what? It's just because you're cool. You're under control, like me. Yeah, but I get mad, Jerry says. You've heard me yell. George explains it's not really yelling because his voice just reaches this comedic pitch. Well, Kramer enters, and so Jerry takes this opportunity to get mad, and he yells at him that he's so sick of him eating all his food. Now you get the hell out of here. Kramer pauses and kind of looks at him and then starts laughing so hard. What is that, a new bit? I told you, George says. He asks both of them if either of them want to come out with him to fix the screen door at his parents' place. Jerry's like, I'm fixing a screen door in the Bronx. But Kramer wants to go. He loves going to the country. George and Kramer exit, and Kramer's still laughing at Jerry about his quote-unquote bit. Elaine enters as they're leaving. Where are they going? Fix a screen door in Queens? She laughs because she thinks it's a funny joke. She asks what Jerry's doing Saturday. He says not going to the Knick game. Well, Elaine needs someone to go with her to Lippman's son's bar mitzvah. If you don't bring a guest, they save on catering. You can get a cheaper gift. She pulls Boggle out of a bag. Oh, I don't think that's possible. My take, just covering the Elaine portion of the scene here, I like how she thinks Jerry is kidding because it does sound ridiculous, that first line, like, oh, they're going to fix a screen door in Queens. It's just so random and specific, and that's what works in comedy many times, the specificity and the randomness. So I like that little laugh in the beginning. When she pulls out that Boggle and says, oh, I don't think that's possible. It's so perfect in that little shake of the box. I mean, we see exactly how much Elaine cares about going to this bar mitzvah. And I have to say, the choice of Boggle here is genius. It's genius. I remember Boggle as a kid, and it felt like everyone had Boggle on their game shelf. Like it was just in every household in the 80s, and it was never fun. I remember trying to play it numerous times. Like we'd be at someone's house, all the kids were like, well, let's play a game. And you try and play it. And I would always quit either because I didn't really understand it or it just hurt my brain. I never found it that fun. I was like, this feels like work. So kudos to Steve Corrin for picking the perfectly disappointing gift. Next, we're at the Costanza's house. George is looking at the screen door hinge. For some reason, Kramer has a camera. He tells Frank to squeeze in closer for the photo he's taking. George tells him that the hinges are all rusted. We hear Estelle from off camera. I hate that old door. Throw it out! Frank yells, Serenity now! Kramer says, you should just get rid of it. She's done enough for you. Would you put her to rest for me? Oh, yeah, I'll take good care of her. Kramer literally rips the door off the hinges and leaves. As George and Frank are walking into the house, we see all these boxes piled up everywhere. And George is like, what is all this? It's junk! Frank says, I've been selling computers for 2 months. Shut up! He tells George how he saw a provocative movie recently called The Net with that girl from the bus. Anyway, it made him want to go into business himself. George is like, this is impossible. You know what it takes to compete with Microsoft and IBM? But Frank insists he has a secret weapon. My son. He leans in and looks at George. Side note, the girl from the bus, that line makes me laugh so hard. I don't think I ever saw The Net. I definitely saw Speed, where she was on the bus. I'm curious how Sandra Bullock feels about that. Do you know you're referenced in Seinfeld as the girl from the bus? Next, we're in Monk's. Jerry is with Patty again, and he's trying to get mad. He's upset about how they gave him cream. He asked for non-fat. I think they have 1% over there. 1%? They can kiss 1% of my ass. Patty chuckles. She's like, enough. I'm not buying it. Damn right you're not buying it. She says, you shouldn't have to try. It's just being open. Jerry insists, I'm open. There's just nothing in there, which I believe that. She sort of goads him by saying that he's a liar over and over again. And finally, Jerry does say very sternly, enough. Oh, that was good, Patty says. Really? It felt good. Next, we're at the bar mitzvah. Elaine is congratulating Mr. Lipman, and he is so proud of his boy being a man. Can you believe it? Oh, congratulations, Adam. Well, Adam goes in and kisses Elaine pretty hard. Lipman has to pry him off of her. He says, I'm a man. The rabbi that we've seen before, Rabbi Kirschbaum, is observing all of this. We know how gossipy he can be. My take. Okay, so let's get the obvious out of the way for this episode. Elaine's plot is technically about being a shiksa, of course, but really it's about her getting assaulted twice by a father and a son. 4 laughs, by the way. It's super cringe and could never be done today, thank goodness. I could really have done without this sexual assault twice on Elaine, but with that being said, the acting here by JLD is fantastic. Her face after she gets forcefully kissed, she's just like so embarrassed, trying to keep her composure. And then that reveal of Rabbi Kirschbaum, so good, so hilarious. Like the look on his face, he's like, what just happened? And also I do enjoy the, I'm a man. That's very funny. Next, we're at Jerry's apartment, and Elaine's just told George and Jerry what happened. Jerry asks, tongue? Yeah. George is like, wow, I didn't try that till I was 23. Wow, this kid isn't just a man, he's a man's man. Elaine says, yeah, and I think he's been telling his friends. I got invitations to 6 more bar mitzvahs. Jerry gets a call. He's yelling. He says something about a layover. Then you upgrade me. He gets off the phone and says, hey, I'm flying first class. Elaine is so confused. Where did that come from? Patty taught me how to get mad. You got a problem with that? No. Elaine's a little scared of this new stern Jerry. George tells him, all right, relax, tough guy. George has to go to help Frank sell some computers. You two working out of that garage, it's like a steel cage death match. We hear some drilling out in the hall, and they find Kramer installing Frank's screen door. What do you need it for? Jerry asks. Oh, the cool evening breezes of any town, USA. He closes it, and it kind of bounces with that screen door sound, and Kramer loves it. Oh, yeah. My take, George and Jerry being impressed by Adam is whatever, again, just a sign of the times where this was considered a manly thing, basically forcing yourself onto a woman. How gross. I do love that moment between Jerry and Elaine, like her getting a bit scared of him. It's a really funny moment and necessary to make the story work. I do agree with that. But I was wondering, I'm like, does this track with Elaine? I mean, she's undoubtedly the feistiest of them all. And she doesn't take any shit, but perhaps it's the shock of it being Jerry being angry. Maybe that just threw her off. Okay, there we go. I just solved it in my head. Now I've justified it. All right, next we're in the Costanza's garage. Morning, Dad. Frank is all business. He says George has to call him Mr. Costanza, and I'll refer to you as Costanza. Well, Lloyd Braun walks in with Frank's coffee, and George asks, what the hell is he doing here? Your mother recommended him. Of course she did. All I heard growing up is, why can't you be more like Lloyd Braun? You know, he was in a mental institution, he tells Frank. Frank doesn't know that because he didn't read his resume. Lloyd rings a bell. Another sale, Mr. Costanza. Chalk me up on the big board. We see this chalkboard in the background with columns for George and Lloyd. And Lloyd has a bunch of check marks, and Frank tells him, this is your lagging. He draws a big 0 on George's side. And then he turns to Lloyd. Good work, Braun. Good for you, Lloyd. I love all the off-camera Estelle screams. It's the best. Next, we're at Lippman's apartment. Elaine is standing in Adam's room, and she's telling him how she just talked to Mr. Lippman and apology accepted. He says very smugly, I'm not apologizing. It was great. I told everyone. Yeah, by the way, can you tell Mitchell Tannenbaum that I'll be unable to attend this Saturday? Are you available Friday night? Adam asks. She's like, what? I am, but that's not the point. You are 13 and I'm in my early 20s. Adam's argument is, I'm a man. I mean, that's what the whole ceremony was about. She says, no, you're not. It takes a long time to be a man. I mean, half my friends aren't even there yet. Well, Adam gets really pissed, and this whole thing was a sham. First, they told me I'd get great gifts, and then someone gave me Boggle. He takes the Boggle box and throws it. He says that he renounces his religion. Lippman enters with a plate of cookies. From now on, I'm no longer Jewish. I quit. And Adam storms out. Lippman is just shocked, and Elaine doesn't want to be responsible. She's like, walnuts, referring to the cookies. My take on this scene, this is a great scene. It's such a fun rapport between JLD and the actor here, who is Ross Malinger. Many of you probably remember him as Tom Hanks' son in Sleepless in Seattle, and he's so good in that as well. I remember recognizing him right away. I just love it all. Elaine's dig at how her friends aren't even men yet. I just love that. And then we get a call back to the Boggle gift, and that throw is hilarious. He really just whips it against the wall. All right, before I get into my next point, I am going to point out that shouldn't Lippman be bringing muffin tops? I mean, does he still have this business? I mean, for all we know, Top of the Muffin to You still exists. So anyway, just my little nerdy fan catch. Okay, my next point, I wanted to discuss that little pause that Elaine takes when he asks her if she's free Friday night, and how it ties to one of the many personas of Elaine, which is Desperate Elaine. Now, I would never suggest that Elaine would date a 13-year-old boy, but I think, though, on some level, she's a bit flattered that this kid finds her attractive. I also think that's why she lies about her age, because part of her, I believe, thinks that if she reveals that she's actually in her early 30s, this kid may not like that. I think JLD was like in her mid to late 30s at this point. And it's not a criticism at all, but just an amusing shade to this very imperfect character of Elaine. And again, I want to stress, I know she has no interest in Adam at all. I'm not suggesting that. But what I'm suggesting is that she is interested in being attractive to him. And I just love that this show has these kinds of moments of nuance like that. You don't get really deep into characters in sitcoms very often, I don't think. And especially in this show, you know, it's not a deep show. No hugging, no learning. This is supposed to be very surface level. And a lot of times the surface is just shallowness. These characters are very unlikable based on their actions. But this, to me, there's a moment there where we can see Elaine being like, I would never date this boy, but there's a part of her that's very flattered by this. And I don't blame her. It's a very clear distinction, though. It's like you don't want to date a much younger man or boy or anything like that, but it is flattering to be like, oh, okay. Usually a kid this age would probably find someone my age not attractive, but hey, you know what? I'll take it for what it is and keep it appropriate, but also take in this little like moment of being like, hey, I'm still looking good. All right, next we're in the Costanza's garage. Frank tells George how they're going to have a little sales contest between he and Lloyd. The loser gets fired and the winner gets a water pick. Estelle yells, "You're not giving away a water pick! Serenity now!" George says, you know what? It doesn't matter because I quit. Well, I guess your mother was right. You never could live up to Lloyd Braun. Well, that pisses George off, so he goes to his phone and he calls Mr. Feineman, and he basically yells at him, "Do you want a computer? Why not?" "All right, I see. Good answer." And he hangs up. And then what does Lloyd do? Of course, he just makes another sale and rings that bell and gives a thumbs up. And now George has his moment of serenity now. Next, we're at Lippman's apartment. Elaine is explaining to Adam that it takes a lot of time to become a man. It doesn't happen overnight. Look at your father. It takes time, patience, experience, several careers of varying success. These are things I look for in a man. Adam gets up. "Well, a lot of good that does me." He looks at her and says, "Early 20s. Adam exits. Elaine apologizes to Mr. Lippman. She says, "Sorry, sir, I tried." "So that's what you're looking for, huh?" "I guess. Why?" And then Lippman turns to her and forcibly kisses her. My take, really funny dialogue for Elaine. I love how she insults Lippman in her explanation of what a man is. It's fantastic. She's insulted her friends now and Mr. Lippman. Adam calling out Elaine with the early 20s comment. I love it. Love it. So funny. Again, Ross Malinger, really great performance by him. Okay, and this is assault number 2. I do think it's creepier because of how Richard Fancy plays it. He's sort of like in this trance. Anyway, it's cringy as hell and it's played for laughs. Not a fan of that. So I'm just so glad we've moved past this type of humor. And really, I think they could have gotten the same effect without the assault. I don't think Mr. Lippman or Adam had to force a kiss onto Elaine. I think it could have been done with dialogue, with other kind of body language, making it clear that they're interested in her, but not have it be like, "Oh, let's just attack Elaine twice in this episode," and have everyone laugh at it. All right, moving on. We're in Jerry's apartment. We start in the hallway. Kramer's setup has gotten more elaborate. It's like a front porch in the suburbs. He has all these potted plants and flowers. There's an American flag. There's a lawn chair. Patty and Jerry walk up and she asks, "What is this?" Jerry says, "Any town, USA." Jerry goes up to the screen door and looks through it like a kid. "Is Kramer home?" Kramer comes out. "Oh, hello, neighbor. Boy, those azaleas are coming in nicely." "Are you barbecuing tonight?" "Oh, right after the fireworks." As Kramer goes back into his place, he discreetly rings the wind chimes manually. He kind of looks over his shoulder. I love that moment. Michael Richards does that so well. Jerry and Patty enter his apartment and they're discussing dinner and she suggests going back to La Caridad. Well, this makes Jerry very mad. "Again? How much flan can a person eat?" She says, "Jerry, you've been yelling at me all afternoon." "Well, I don't think more flan is the answer." "Maybe I should just leave." "Maybe," Jerry says. Goodbye. Double goodbye. Patty exits and we see Kramer with Sparkler sitting in his lawn chair. Elaine enters, tells Kramer, "Happy New Year. Y'all come back real soon." Jerry closes the door. Elaine asks Jerry if he and Patty just broke up. "Yeah, and I don't want to talk about it." And Jerry goes into his bathroom and slams the door. Elaine's like, "Oh, so you're free tonight. You want to go to this place called La Caridad?" Jerry comes out. He's very sad. "That's the last thing she said to me. She wanted to go, but I wasn't in the mood." "Whoa, what's the matter?" Elaine asks. "It's Patty." "Jerry, you break up with a girl every week," Elaine points out. Jerry wipes at his face. "What is this salty discharge?" "Oh my God, you're crying," Elaine says. "Oh, this is horrible. I care." My take, not much for Elaine here. We're just moving Jerry's story along, but I like the interaction. I love the line, "You break up with a girl every week." It's so good. Next, we're in Jerry's hallway. Jerry is sitting and talking to Kramer out in the hall. He's in his robe and PJs. He's clearly depressed. He says, "Patty won't call me back. I don't know if I can live without her." "Oh, this girl's really gotten to you." He says, "I don't know what's wrong with me." "It's simple," Kramer explains. "You let out one emotion and the rest follow. It's like Pandora's box." "That's the mother from Bewitched. You mean Pandora." "Well, she had one too." George arrives and wants to talk to Jerry for a minute. So he and Jerry walk in and close the door. When Kramer gets nailed with a baseball, he starts yelling at the neighborhood kids, "I told you, next time I'm keeping the ball." Then he gets a rock thrown at him. "You're not getting your rock back either." Then he goes to enter his apartment, but runs right into the screen door. We cut to Jerry's apartment, and George can't believe that he's still upset about Patty. She's just a chick. Ever heard of something called feelings? Jerry's so emotional. Well, George is still in sales mode. He says, I have the thing to cheer you up. A brand new computer. You can check porn and stock quotes. Jerry sort of smiles. Oh, porn and quotes. I'm so lucky to have a friend like you. Have I ever told you how much I love you? George is just taken aback. What? I love you, George. Come here. And George is like, no, I'm here. If you want a computer, call me. I gotta go. Go wherever you want. I'm still gonna love you. George opens the door to leave, but then Kramer comes in and shows them the silly string all over his screen door, and he's so mad. He's going to teach these kids a lesson. He's like, where's that hose I left under your sink? Hose under my sink. I love you too, Kramer. Kramer has no problem with that. I love you too, buddy. So he hooks up the hose and he tells George to turn the water on when he gives the signal. And George is like, what signal? I'll scream, hoochie mama. Again, George is just focused on making a computer sale. So he says, please, only if you buy a computer, I have to make a sale. But Kramer's not really listening. And meanwhile, Jerry's approaching George with this goofy smile on his face because he just loves him so much. And so George is so freaked out by that he does not even turn on the water when Kramer starts yelling, hoochie mama, and he gets nailed in the face and really all over with silly string. All right, next we're in a cab. George and Elaine are in the back, and she's telling him how Lippman is interested in her now. George says, well, this is natural because you're a shiksa. It means non-Jewish woman. She says, what does being a shiksa have to do with anything? You have shiksappeal. Jewish men love the idea of being with a woman who's not like their mother. Elaine thinks that's insane. You know what's insane, George says, the price I can get you on a computer. She looks at him. She's like, I'm not buying a computer from you. There's porn. Elaine takes a beat. Even so. Damn it. My take on this scene, I love a Costanza moment. This one's super quick. It's not a very long scene, but I like that George is the one to point out to Elaine what's happening with the shiksappeal. Oh my gosh. And then that nanosecond beat she takes after the porn comment, it's just so brilliant. Just another little facet of Elaine that we haven't seen before. She's got some kinks that she might want to watch some porn for. I'm here for it. Okay, next we're back at Lippman's apartment. Elaine is talking to Lippman, addressing this whole thing, saying that, I was very flattered that you found me attractive enough to lunge at me, but that, you're only interested in me because I'm a shiksa. Mr. Lippman insists that is simply not true. She's like, if you weren't Jewish, you wouldn't be interested in me. Oh no, he says, I'm going to prove it. She goes, oh God, don't. I renounce Judaism. Oy vey. This scene is just moving everything along. I do like the lunge at me comment. Again, a woman just being too polite here. Instead of pointing out she's pointing out how gross he was, but you also have to couple that with, I was really flattered by it though. Ugh. I will say, I really enjoy Richard Fancy. I think he plays this really well. He's always fun to watch. So I will focus on that versus the shitty things that women have to do so often. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Kramer has been attacked by the kids in the building. Joey Zamfino, the little boy that he babysat and did karate with. He's really turned into a little hellion. Anyway, Kramer is covered in eggs, but he's totally fine because of Serenity Now, Serenity Now, Serenity Now. Jerry's like, oh, you're trying Frank's relaxation technique. He says it's amazing. The anger just melts away. Serenity Now, Serenity Now. He tries to open a bag of chips, but it won't budge, and he starts shaking in anger, but then he stops himself. Serenity Now. He goes to leave, and then Elaine is entering. She says, what happened to you? Serenity. Elaine tells Jerry the latest, how Lippman is now renounced. This shiksa thing is out of control. What is with you people? But Jerry's just looking at her kind of strangely. She says, what are you looking at? Jerry asks her to sit down. Oh, no, she says, I can't take any more gentle sobbing. Then he starts in about what it means to be complete, and he's sort of pouring his heart out. But meanwhile, Elaine is just searching for some fruit. She's in such a fruit mood. Oh, and then she finds a banana. Jerry says that everything that they've been looking for is right in front of them. Elaine, and then he gets down on one knee. And at that moment, George busts in with a bunch of computers. He blurts out this terrible plan to beat Lloyd at the sales contest. Then he notices Jerry's positioning and he's like, what's wrong with your leg? I'm asking Elaine to marry me. Elaine is just in shock. She looks over at George. She's got a bite of banana sticking out of her mouth. George gets the fuck out. This is really awkward. He says, I'll just store the computers at Kramer's. So he exits, and Elaine pries her hand out of Jerry's and says, she's got a lot going on with Lipman right now. Lipman? Yeah, him too. And then she pretends to hear George calling for her, and she's trying to get out of this apartment as fast as possible. And she's telling Jerry to just stay there as she bumbles out the door. My take, this is brilliantly played by JLD. That banana bite in the mouth, it makes it just funnier. It just adds so much to it. It's a type of physicality. Now, I'm not sure if that was scripted. It wasn't mentioned, or it was part of the direction, but it's hilarious nonetheless. I have a feeling JLD came up with that herself. It just enhances, like a banana bite out of your mouth in this type of a moment. It just enhances how unromantic the moment really is. Also, I love what are you looking at? Her shiksappeal is struck again, even with Jerry. That George moment is also great. How uncomfortable he is with this new Jerry. Even if the affection isn't directed at him, he's like, okay, this is way too weird. I got to get the hell out of here. Next, we're back at the Costanza garage. Frank is telling Lloyd how George is kicking his butt. And we see George make a call to a Mr. Vandelay, and he asks if he wants to buy a computer. Turns out Mr. Vandelay wants 24. George, you're white hot. Then we hear the recording from George's phone. If you'd like to make a call, please hang up. George hangs up before anyone hears it. Frank tells Lloyd good news and bad news. They're both the same. You're fired. George wins the water pick. You're not giving away a water pick. Frank exits while yelling, Serenity now, Serenity now. As he's getting ready to leave, Lloyd tells George that Serenity Now stuff doesn't work, just bottles up the anger and eventually you blow. George doesn't think he's very credible. What do you know? You were in the nut house. What do you think put me there? He says, Serenity now, insanity later. Next, we're in Jerry's hallway. There's toilet paper everywhere, eggs all over the walls. Jerry asks Kramer what happened, but Kramer's sitting in his lawn chair in this sort of Serenity Now trance, just repeating it over and over again. And Jerry has to yell his name, and he snaps out of it. Oh, Jerry. Oh, yes, the kids did some redecorating. You can tell Kramer's clearly on the brink of a meltdown. Jerry's like, you don't look well. Oh, really? That's odd because I feel perfectly at peace with the world. Then he has a little spasm of anger when he comes back. Serenity now, Serenity now. Jerry apologizes because he realized he just stepped on Kramer's last rose. Kramer tells him not to worry about it. There's always next spring. Would you excuse me? And he goes into his apartment and we hear him yell, Serenity now! George arrives busting because he beat Lloyd. He says, come on, let's go get the computers from Kramer's. But then we hear a bunch of crashing and yelling from Kramer's apartment. And we cut to Jerry's apartment. George is losing it. He's yelling at Kramer for using the computers to get his frustrations out. Why couldn't you have squeezed one of those rubber balls? Why did you have to destroy 25 computers? Kramer apologizes. He says, I owe you one. And Kramer exits, whistling and as happy as can be. Jerry comes over to George. You want to talk about it? Oh, please don't tell me you love me again, Jerry. I can't handle it. And Jerry tells him that letting his emotions out was the best thing he ever did. I mean, sure, I'm not funny anymore, but there's more to life than making shallow, fairly obvious observations. Finally, George says, okay, here goes. And Jerry kind of nestles down with his head on his hands, ready to listen. Next, we're at the rabbi's office, Rabbi Kirschbaum. Elaine is consulting with him. Is there anything I can do to combat this shiksappeal? He tells her, shiksappeal is a myth like the Yeti or the Sasquatch. Well, she says something's going on because every able-bodied Israelite in the county is driving pretty strong to the hoop. He laughs it off. He says, there's much you don't understand about the Jewish religion. For example, did you know that rabbis are allowed to date? What does that have to do with anything? Then he starts inviting her to a timeshare in Myrtle Beach. But when he looks back, she has left in a hurry. Elaine? Laney? My take, this is the heightening rule. We just keep heightening what's happening to Elaine with the shiksappeal. I'm very glad that the rabbi also didn't assault Elaine. There is this comedy rule of 3, but I'm glad that they didn't choose to do that. If there was another kiss forced onto Elaine, I probably would not like this episode anymore. But anyway, I love the visual of the rocking chair at the end. It's just like, she got out of there so fast. She's like, oh no, now the rabbi. Next, we're at Jerry's apartment. George has just finished telling Jerry his deepest, darkest fears and everything he's capable of. And we see Jerry is just mouth open, cannot believe what he just heard, very fearful. He says, yikes, and wishes George good luck with all that. And he's backing away from him. George is like, where you going? I thought I could count on you for some compassion. I think you scared me straight, Jerry says. Elaine enters all pumped. She tells Jerry she's in. She tells him, maybe they should get married, and agrees that what they've been looking for all this time is right in front of them. Jer, let's do it. I tell you, I don't see it happening, he says. What? What happened to the new Jerry? He doesn't work here anymore. Well, that's just great, she says. Jerry goes to leave. I love you, Jerry, George says to him. Right back at you, Slick. And he exits. Elaine sits down next to George, so defeated. George is all open and sensitive now. He looks over at Elaine and tells her, after all of these years, I've always wanted to see you two get back together. Well, that's because you're an idiot, Elaine says. My take, we get a huge pie in the face moment here for Elaine. She's come around to the idea of marrying Jerry. She's excited to do it, but it's too late. The old Jerry is back. Really wonderful way to wrap up this story. And also the best way to end an episode, well, I guess pre-tag of the episode, is a Ben Costanza moment with Elaine calling George an idiot. Love it, love it, love it. Chef's kiss. All right, then moving on to the tag. We're at the Costanza's garage. Frank is so mad, telling George how he single-handedly brought Costanza and son to the brink of bankruptcy. Well, what about all the Lloyd Braun sales? He was crazy. His phone wasn't even hooked up. Just liked ringing that bell. Estelle enters. I told you to clean up the garage. I have to put my car in. He says, this is a place of business. Serenity now. All right. And Estelle walks out. George tells Frank, maybe you should lay off the Serenity now stuff. Well, what should I say instead? Hoochie mama? We see the garage is opening. Move your crap, I'm coming in. No, you're not. Hoochie mama, hoochie mama. Oh my goodness. I remember seeing that for the first time and dying, loving it. I mean, Jerry Stiller yelling hoochie mama. I don't know what's much better than that. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break and I will see you on the other side. Oh no. You just got an invitation for an event you have absolutely no interest in, but you have to go because the consequences of skipping are far worse. Not only will you incur excruciating conversations, buffets of pasty food, and lame music, you must also bring a gift to this blasted party. That's where we come in. Introducing Obligifts, a website dedicated to providing the cheapest and least thoughtful gifts for those you don't give two shits about.
I had to go to my cousin's graduation party. My cousin, who used to fart on my pillow and kicked my fish tank. I hate him, but if I didn't go, I wouldn't hear the end of it from my mom and my aunt. So I went to Obligifts and found the perfect, awful graduation present. A book of poetry by Jewel. Hell, I bet he was so pissed. From blockbuster gift cards to banana-scented anything, Obligifts will let your hosts know that you came to their party, but you weren't happy about it. Visit www.thisisnonrefundable.haha today and select something for that person you low-key want to murder. For a limited time, you will receive a free pocket flask for, well, obvious reasons. Obligifts, because nothing says fuck you like a pack of generic batteries. And we're back. There wasn't much to the extras for this episode. I didn't know this, though. I wanted to mention Steve Coren, the writer of this episode. He based literally that very first scene in the car with the Costanzas and George driving. That was like verbatim a scene from his life. So he says that his parents were the Costanzas. They fought all the time. They were always yelling at each other. And his dad really did
get this relaxation technique from a doctor and he would yell Serenity now. And he said, I remember distinctly saying, are you supposed to yell it? So anyway, I thought that was amazing. I mean, I love whenever I find out these new little tidbits of trivia about Seinfeld. And I thought this was cute too. His dad was very proud because, Serenity now became such a cultural phenomenon in the country after this episode aired and still to this day. And so his dad was sort of famous in their neighborhood. He was the guy who started Serenity Now. So he was very proud of that. All right, let's move on to Greg's sack lunch. Greg is our most dedicated contributor. Every week he sends us a sack full of his thoughts. And this is what he had to say this week. His overall thoughts, he says. Oh, how I've missed the Costanzas. This is a pretty great episode all around, and I like how equally divided the plots are. Elaine gets some Jewish love from both Mr. Lippman and his teenage son, which is quite a fun new dynamic for her character. George competing with Lloyd Braun under Frank's management is also hilarious, and both Jerry and Kramer get some funny stuff as well. Of the last season, this is one of my favorites. Totally. Yeah, I'm going to get into that in a little bit here, but it's very evenly divided. Things connect so beautifully. And yeah, I give Mr. Corrin some kudos for that. Next in Greg's sack are his favorite scenes and Elaine moments. He says, Elaine's reaction to being kissed by Mr. Lippman's son, Adam, is hilarious. Think of how tough that is to play, given the circumstances that you're actually being kissed by a minor. She does it amazingly, and I love the next scene where she's telling Jerry and George what happened, and she says, I think he's been telling his friends. I got invitations to 6 more bar mitzvahs. At least when Julia kisses a minor, it's on screen only, Jerry. Ooh, burn, Greg. I love that burn so much. Yeah, it's scripted and it wasn't her choice either. Totally. I think she plays that moment is so fantastic after the kiss when she's just looking around and she does. Brilliant. Uncomfortable Elaine. Like, how embarrassing is that? Like, what the fuck? It's so shocking. It's embarrassing. It's just like there's so many emotions going on and we see it all in JLD's acting. It's brilliant. Next, Greg says, my favorite Elaine scene is when she's explaining to Adam that he's not a man yet. I love the line, would you please tell Mitchell Tannenbaum that I'll be unavailable to attend this Saturday? Her explaining that he's not a man yet and she's too old for him, given that she's in her early 20s, is a hilarious moment. We don't see JLD playing off kids a lot, so this feels original for the show in its last season. None of the people the 4 date really ever seem to have kids. In fact, I only remember one when George dated the woman who had the fire at the birthday party. They should have played with this more given that they were all nearing 40. Oh my gosh, that is such a good point. I did talk about what a great rapport JLD and Ross Malinger had together, but you're right. Yeah, we don't see especially Elaine playing off a child very much. We have that babysitting episode, but it's very brief with that child. And this is different because she has like one-on-one interactions. There's a whole plot between the two of them. And I think it's a testament to how both of those actors are just really great and really, really talented. And I've already gone through my theory that she is pretty flattered by this kid liking her, although she would never, ever, Jerry, act on it. Next, Greg says, my favorite line of Elaine's is when she's letting down Mr. Lippman and says, don't get me wrong, Mr. Lippman. I'm very flattered that you found me attractive enough to lunge at me. I also love when she calls George an idiot at the end. Brilliant line delivery every time. Oh gosh, yeah, I pointed that out too. There's something about the way JLD says idiot. It's always funny. And bonus, she's saying it to George, and bonus, it ends the episode. So funny. I like the delivery of lunge at me. It's really well. And I'm always actually watching Richard Fancy in that moment. And again, he's playing it so serious. Like, hey, like he's like hanging on her every word. Like, please, he wants her so bad out of nowhere. It's the shiksappeal, I suppose. But yes, very good line deliveries for both. Greg goes on to say, while not an Elaine moment, I love when Frank says he was flipping through the dials and saw a provocative movie called The Net with that girl from the bus. Obvious Sandra Bullock reference that was probably a lot more understood at the time than viewers today would get. I cannot say it enough. Frank Costanza is the best auxiliary character on this show, and I'd put Estelle at a close second. Anytime they're on, it's gold, Jerry, gold. Oh my gosh, of course. Yes, yes, yes. Agreed with all of that. And of course, I get the Sandra Bullock thing, but you're right. I mean, people today would be like, what the hell is he talking about? But I mean, Speed was like a juggernaut. I mean, it was huge. One of the biggest movies of the decade. So to say the girl from the bus, that's all they had to say. And that's exactly how an old man would refer to Sandra Bullock. Like, there's no way he's going to remember her name. Elderly people, the names just fall out of their head. I mean, given that Steve Corrin, like I said, has based this whole storyline on his parents, I think that's probably something his dad said. That girl from the bus, I can't be bothered to know her name. Next, Greg says, again, not Elaine, but Kramer and his Anytown USA screen door thing just tickles me. It's so ridiculous of a premise, but I almost get it. I know, I agree. I think it's very Kramer. It's just like, this is totally something he would do. It's like he's pretending and everyone's kind of going along with it. It's so fantastic and really funny. Yeah, it's just such a treat. I love that plot for Kramer. Next in Greg's sack is his scene swap idea. Oh, and he says, I don't know that I'd take anything out. I like all 4 stories here. All right, fair enough. Now on to his other section in the sack. He says, nice appearance by convicted felon Lori Loughlin in this episode. By the way, I know a lot of people say Lori Loughlin, but on her IMDb page in the trivia section, it says that it is pronounced Loughlin. So, hey, I'm not a really big fan of hers, but I will at least say your name right. I think that's a lesson for a lot of people right now. Even if you don't like someone or you don't agree with their views, fucking say their name right. All right, moving on. Greg says, Aunt Becky does a good job sort of pushing Jerry's buttons with a character flaw of his. We don't get this often because usually the love interest has some glaring flaw. She plays it well for a criminal. I think we're on the same page here, Greg. Not a fan of her in real life, but yeah, no, I give her props. She is really good in this episode. Yeah, and you're right. We don't get to really point out Jerry's flaw here. It's usually like, well, her hands are too big or she eat her peas one at a time. So yeah, this is refreshing. Next, Greg says, also wanted to shout out Ross Malinger, who plays Adam in this, and I'm sure bragged to his pals that he got to kiss the gorgeous JLD. I remember him as a kid from both Sleepless in Seattle and Sudden Death, and I crap every time he says, I'm a man. Yeah, he's really good. Oh my goodness. He's so, everything I've seen him in, I haven't seen Sudden Death, but Sleepless in Seattle, he is so good. He's not an annoying child actor. So natural, so believable. So, oh my God, he's missing his mom. He has a nightmare. Oh, he's so good. And finally, Greg says, whenever discussing this show with my mother, she recites the Estelle line, you're not giving away our water pick, consistently for 25 years now. The same line. I love that. I'm going to be quoting Seinfeld until, I don't know, probably my last breath. It's just never going to go away. I can't see it going away. Thank you so much, Greg, for your thoughts. We always love them. And now it's time to close Greg's sack lunch. Okay, moving on to my favorite Elaine moments. I love the conversation with Adam. I am, but that's not the point. You're 13 and I'm in my early 20s. Love it, love it, love it. So much is being said in that line delivery, the emotions, love it all. And a close second, Elaine's porn pause. She thought about that porn on the computer for half a second, but she still said no. And then my final notes. All right, putting the cringe moments aside, I do love this premise of Elaine being a shiksa. I think it's great. Bringing Lipman back is always fun because Richard Fancy is fantastic. So the acting, Ross Malinger, Richard Fancy, everything is really well done in this shiksa plotline, except for the assault parts. And I like how also in this episode, they give the audience this little kind of tease of Jerry wanting to marry Elaine and then Elaine wanting to marry Jerry. And of course, we know it would not happen. Like even when we're watching this episode, no one's fooled into thinking like, oh, they're going to get back together in season 9. No, fuck no. But it was just a fun thing to play with. I think it was really well done. And everything about this episode, the way it was structured by Steve Corrin, so brilliant. I love how things dovetailed nicely. Like everything was connected in just the right way. Like I said before, and Greg said too, it's just so balanced. It's a really balanced episode. And that's what works whenever an episode's really well done. It's because of that balance and, everyone's storyline makes sense together, separately. I love it. Now, Elaine coming around and saying she wants to marry Jerry. Let's do it. I think it does track with her because there's desperate Elaine. We have notes of desperate Elaine in this episode. And when she's in desperate Elaine mode, there are moments of weakness. And that's what we see here. And luckily the timing didn't work out. But, I just like that we saw that moment as well. My scene swap idea, I would just swap out the kisses, obviously. I've mentioned it many times now. I'm sure you're sick of hearing it. But I just think, like I said earlier, there would have been other ways to pull this off. And I think probably even better than forcefully kissing Elaine. I think we could have had something verbally that would have been really funny. Other body language too, that could have been fun. I might even let it go with Adam kissing her, but not Mr. Lipman. Come on, Mr. Lipman should know better. Okay, and I think that's all I can say about the Serenity now. Please be sure to follow the podcast on social media. On Instagram, it's at HotHeavyElaine. On TikTok, at Elaine Bennis Podcast. And if you'd like to email me, please do at elainepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.